Welcome to the Art of Likeability, where you learn the secrets to becoming more likable in all areas of your life. Increasing your likability improves your relationships, and improved relationships increases your success in all areas of your life. Let's jump in with your host, Arel Moody.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Arel Moody here, host of The Art of Likeability, where we show you the things you need to build your likability skills in your professional life and your personal lives to help you get the edge. This is going to be a super special episode, folks, if you really want to build relationships with people that you like, but maybe they're not in the next room. Maybe you run a virtual company. Maybe you have team members that are all across the country or all across the world. Maybe you do a lot more with technology now, so you don't have to jump on planes. So there's all of these things that you would need to learn how to do to make it and get the edge and likability in this new technology plethora that we have. Well, I am excited that you are listening because we have a really super awesome rock star with us today who's going to really give us some great tips on how to do just that. He's someone who has a great knowledge of remote company culture. So if you are a leader or if you are a manager or if you are part of a team that has remote members, this is going to be really cool. And if you're somebody that's maybe looking for a job right now, being able to demonstrate that you've got awesome knowledge of how to make remote company culture work is going to truly give you an edge. So I'm excited to welcome our guest. Let me tell you about how cool this rock star is. So Liam Martin is the co-founder and CMO of staff.com. That's correct, the single word staff.com, which is very impressive to me that he got that domain. It's a online staffing agency which matches employers and employees in long-term working relationships. He's got over 10 years of experience in remote team management, focusing on how to make teams work more efficiently online. He's managing large teams literally in 9 different countries. He's passionate about understanding how online collaboration happens, how business processes works and modeling. And the guy is an amazing, if you've ever heard of timedoctor.com, he's the guy behind that. So he's a very successful entrepreneur, awesome guy, and is going to give us some great info. I'm totally jazzed about this because I've worked nothing but remotely with most of my employees and team members. So I'm curious to hear what we got to learn from the man himself, Liam Martin. What's going on, Liam? You there?
I'm certainly here. Thanks a lot for that introduction. I think that is probably the most exciting introduction that I've ever gotten for a podcast. And I've done quite a few of these. So that's saying quite a bit.
Well, I'm excited. I am truly excited to have you here. And, I want to jump in, and I love jumping right into content. But if you can, for folks who may not know about your story or staff.com or Time Doctor, just give me a quick overview of, how you got started in these different businesses and how you got to where you are right now. Just give me the entrepreneurial story in a nutshell, if you will.
Sure. So very quickly, I was in grad school and I was trying to become a professor. I remember teaching this class and thinking, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, and realized after the fact that it was one of the worst experiences of my entire life. I'd been a TA for about 5 years, but then when I actually started teaching a university class, it was a horrible experience. And I literally walked into my supervisor's office and said, you know what? I don't think I'm very good at this. And my supervisor looked right back at me and said, I don't think you are either. So I said, can I get a master's, instead of this PhD? And he said, well, can you write 200 pages? And I said, yes, I certainly can. And he said, go for it. 2 weeks later, I threw one of the maybe not 2 weeks later, 3 to 4 weeks later, I threw under his door 200 of the worst written pages I think I've ever written, and got my master's degree and was able to go off into the world. Now, off of that, venture, I had figured out that I was actually getting paid absolute junk in the class that I was teaching. I was getting paid about $2,600 for the course, which worked out to about $3 an hour. I think I did work that out at one point. So instead, what I decided to do was to tutor students privately. And I was actually making more money tutoring these students privately than than giving the class. So I said, you know what? I think I can turn this into a business. And I bought a GoDaddy URL and started up a little website, and I started tutoring students through Skype. And things were going quite well. It took a long time to develop, but over about 2.5 years, I had almost 100 tutors throughout Europe and the United States and Canada. And these were graduate students that were teaching undergraduate students through Skype. And it was a great business. Now, the problem that I had was eventually the business kind of outscaled itself. So what I mean by that is I would have Johnny that would come in, and maybe Johnny's paying me $1,000 a month in tutoring fees. And Johnny comes to me and says, you know, my tutor spent 10 hours with me and I just got charged for 20. So what's going on here? You know, this is crap. So I'd go back over to the tutor and I would say, hey, did you actually work for 20 hours with Johnny? And he'd say, of course I did. Of course I worked for 20 hours with Johnny. And then I would basically end up having to pay the tutor their full 20 hours and then refund Johnny for half of those hours. And that was destroying the business. Long story short, went to South by Southwest, was speaking on a panel there, met my co-founder Rob at that point, and he had this really junky beta alpha of Time Doctor, which was able to show you how long remote employees were working and how productive they were working on tasks. So we basically said, I literally looked at that and said, this is going to solve my tutoring business. I had recently sold one of my other businesses at that point and said, you know what, let's work on this together. And that was about 3.5 years ago. So up until this point, it's been sort of a long path. Time Doctor has been really, at this point, one of the market leaders for remote productivity tracking. And then after that, we built a second product called staff.com, which is designed for long-term working relationships. So if you want to do anything more than a project, you'll come to staff.com and you'll hire somebody remotely to be able to work with them on a long-term basis.
Very cool. Well, you clearly have done something right, because Time Doctor and staff are just absolutely crushing it. And I know that a successful business really depends upon a successful culture and successful leadership. And I don't think you can find a very successful business that doesn't have both of those things. So what I'd love to do is to jump into your mind a little bit and find out a little bit about when folks are starting to, maybe hire someone to do some remote work for them on a project or long-term basis, or if their company starts moving into a more remote space. What are some of the common mistakes that you see people making, and what are the things that can easily correct those mistakes?
I think the biggest mistake is probably understanding that there is a big difference between managing someone face-to-face and managing someone 10,000 miles away. There is a fundamental gap between those two extremes. So as an example, let's say that you have an employee that's sitting right next to you. You are training that employee to do a task. If they do it incorrectly, you can just see exactly what they're doing and show them how to do it correctly. When they're 10,000 miles away, you can't sit next to them. You could do a screen share, and we can go into that a little bit further, but fundamentally, they are not in the same room as you. So what you need to be able to do is create processes. So create operational procedures that you can document, digitize, so put up on a wiki or something like that, or put up on like a membership site. I like to use Wishlist. A lot of my clients use that software to put all of their documentation on a single website, and then take that information and communicate it to their remote employees so that they understand clearly exactly what they need to do. We have a saying in the company that orders shouldn't be easy to understand. They should be impossible to misunderstand. And it's a little bit of a tweak, and the change isn't that much, but when you think in that mindset, you stop thinking, oh, you know what, they don't need, I'm going from A to Z, I'm going to miss a couple letters in the middle because everyone knows preemptively that part of the process is very easy to accomplish. It's not. You have to actually put everything in place to be able to communicate exactly what you want done. And if you miss those parts, inevitably your systems will break down. This is quite easy to solve when it's only 1 or 2 employees working with you. And we've got more than 60 people in the company right now. It's increasingly more complex. I've spoken to companies and worked with companies that are much larger than this. I actually had spoken to the woman who runs the US Patent Office, and she has 14,000 employees, of which 9,000 of them are remote. I think it's probably the largest remote organization I've ever seen. And she could talk for days about process modeling because it's just so critical to communicate exactly what's being done within an organization. So from an operational perspective, that's probably the biggest thing that you need to learn. And then, but we want to talk about more how you can actually communicate and create real connections with people, because you can communicate the process to somebody, but if they don't actually want to do it, and if they don't like where they're working and they don't like you, then they're not actually going to do that, or they're going to do it badly. So that's the critical piece that you really have to overcome after you've built these processes into your business.
And I'm so glad you brought up that last part, because that is something that is fascinating. Because as you mentioned earlier, if you tell someone, here's how you do it, and then they go, okay, great. And then because we're humans and we make human errors, they start doing it wrong, and you see them, you go, oh, that's going to cause you, here's why, and fix it, blah, 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 blah. But now you create these processes and people can go through them and they can understand them. But how do you make sure that they, one, are going through them correctly? And how do you get to that point where it's not going to be misunderstood? Because sometimes I think something is clear as day and there's no way anyone can mess it up, but someone else reads it and it's not. So what are some insights into making sure that the person actually can understand the process that you create?
The biggest thing that I would suggest, just as a starting point for anybody that's going to build these processes, is build the process and then give it to your employees. And if you don't have employees right now, give it to a few of your friends and ask them to replicate the process. And if they can't do it, that's a red flag right there. If they can't actually get through the process, it means that your process is broken. You didn't identify the steps that needed to be done. But what we do right now with our employees is we ask them for 3 things that's wrong with that process. And this is actually, it kind of correlates to company culture as well. There are a lot of cultural environments or cultures in the world. Southeast Asia is a perfect example. There's an interesting study about aircraft pilots and how there's a lot more plane crashes in Southeast Asia than any other place in the world. And they actually discovered it was a sociological answer. It wasn't, that the planes were built any worse or that there was an engineering problem or anything like that. It was that the co-pilot would not tell the pilot when something was wrong, because they said, the pilot's the boss, the captain is in command of the ship, and I don't want to question that captain. Well, then they crashed their plane. This is a problem. Whereas if you compare that to the United States as an example, it's a culture where people will call each other out on different things. So what we try to encourage, and about half of our team is located in Southeast Asia. Another part of it's in Eastern Europe. Another part of it is in Canada, Australia. And then I think the smallest part is actually in the United States. We've got 2 people there. What we've discovered is we need to be able to create an environment where it's okay for other people to call anyone out on what they're doing. So we encourage people to say, what do you not agree with in this process? So as an example, we had an email sequence that just went out recently for one of our customer lists. And one of the employees that was reviewing this email list said, you know what, I don't think this is right because of, I think this is too pushy. I think we're sending too many messages. And we would have this back and forth debate about that. And I completely disagreed with him. But then we brought it to a vote and I kind of got outvoted. And I said, you know what? We're going to test it both ways. I wouldn't have had that interaction had we not created an environment in which open debate was not only accepted, but encouraged. So one of the surefire ways to not work at staff.com or Time Doctor anymore is to keep your mouth shut. If I haven't heard from you, either positive or negative, and giving your opinion, then it's a problem, because we need to be able to make sure that everyone is checking up on everyone else, regardless of what position they hold within the company.
It's really interesting. And I think that that's actually a very important cultural norm, because I've had folks that have worked for me who have been international employees, and the culture in America might be, hey, I don't like this, I'm gonna let you know. But in other places, you never question the boss, you just don't do it. So making sure that, and also people with different personality types, they may need to know that it's okay to speak up. So I think an important step is making sure that the clarity of, we want you to voice your opinion. When you voice your opinion, we're not going to shoot it down. And I love that aspect of, whether it's positive or negative, I need to be hearing from you. I think that's really valuable content. And when they are learning these processes, right, and the processes of how you do them, and I can imagine it's a bunch of stuff, right? Like, it's a huge handbook, there's various things. How does one, once you do this intense knowledge transfer, this dump of what's in your head and how something should function, and you put it in, how do you actually make sure people are using it and not getting lost or confused or not knowing how to access something?
So week one, when an employee joins the company, their only job is to look through the wiki. And we've got over 500 operational processes. They're given access to the full wiki, which means, let's say you're a developer, you could get access to the customer service wiki documents, the marketing documents, everything within the company. And then at the end of that week, you're actually quizzed on what you've learned. It's really important for us to know for everyone to know their operational procedures and everyone else's operational procedures within the company, because we look at the company as a machine, and everybody is fundamentally replaceable up to the founders and the CEO of the company. So if something happens, like my co-founder Rob is out getting married or something like that, well, what operational procedures is he responsible for, and how can me and 2 or 3 other people pick up the slack to be able to make sure that everything runs smoothly? So you need to be able to make sure that the company is independent of a singular person, and that's incredibly important moving forward. Now, specifically as it applies to these process documents, we go a little bit of a step further than most other process docs. We include a short bio, basically a half paragraph to 1 paragraph, talking about why this process is important. So, as an example, properly notarizing code in GitHub. Why is this important? Well, if there's a problem further down the line, and let's say another developer is working on your piece of code, they need to be able to know exactly what your mindset was and why you wrote this line of code here in this way, because they need that type of documentation in place. And then we go into, usually it's no more than 2 pages. If it's more than 2 pages, we turn it into 2 different processes. We've found that people can only really absorb about 2 pages of information if it's related to a singular task. So we have those 2 pages step by step by step. Usually I try to restrict it to 1 page. Then on top of that, we have a video that brings you through the steps of that process. And that's either a YouTube video or even like a Jing video as an example, but we use YouTube videos because we can document them and keep them forever. So we'll have the short version, we'll have the video, we'll have the explanation of the task, the video, the long version, the step-by-step guide in text. And what we usually do when we put together a process like this is we go through it 3 times before we actually operationalize it. And the reason why we do it 3 times is the first time that you do something, you're just kind of discovering how the process works. The second time that you do something, you're refining your methods so that you know, okay, the first time I made these 7 mistakes, and the second time I'm not going to make those mistakes. And then the third time, you're actually going to process it. And you're going to process it in a very unique way on your third pass because it is still new in your mind, which means all of those little pieces that you would have really seen as second nature if it was your 20th pass or 30th path on this task would not have been included in the process document had you not done it, had you not documented it on the third time that you do it. The other reason why we document things on the third time is because if someone does something once, it probably doesn't need to be turned into a document. If they do it twice, possibly. If they do it 3 times, almost guaranteed you're going to have to do it a 4th time. So it's better to basically turn this into a process document as opposed to continue to do it on your own, because again, we don't want any individual person responsible for larger parts of the business chain. So that's how we operationalize these procedures. Once we've got them all together, one of the things that we've done recently actually is all of our SEO procedures are definitely going through a flux. SEO has changed over the last few years, and there's a lot of things that we used to do that did work that right now, if we did, would actually penalize us in the eyes of Google, and that's search engine optimization for anybody that doesn't know SEO. So what we've done is we've built an organic model inside of our wiki document for SEO, which means we probably have, 50 or 60 procedures, and we say these procedures need to be updated. Anybody that can write a better procedure can then present that to the group. It can be edited on the wiki document, and anybody's new process that's brought forth in front of the group, and we all vote to say which one's the best, they get a bonus. So we're basically encouraging them to always keep the Wikidoc up to date. And it almost evolves organically because people will say, hey, you know what? I think this process needs to change, and I've written out a new document. Do you think that this is better than the previous document? And if more people say yes than no, then we turn it into a new document, and they're given a bonus for that particular process. So it's a really organic system. And for me, it's actually quite amazing because I'll go into that wiki and learn new things that would have taken me, weeks to learn if I was just going through SEO blogs and just learning stuff here and there.
Cool. I love the idea of giving incentive to the people going through it to not just complain about it. Like, oh man, this document is so laborious. I wish it was X. Well, what does X look like? Congratulations, you got something. So it's there's a Japanese management philosophy I love called Kaizen, which for those who have not heard the term, it's just basically it was popularized by Toyota. And it was the idea of constant, never-ending improvement. And it seems like when you have a culture where folks are constantly being asked to update, you get to tap into that Kaizen philosophy of constant, never-ending improvement.
Yeah, definitely.
And what is, for anyone who's not heard, everyone knows of Wikipedia, but maybe not everyone knows what a wiki is. Could you just tell everyone what a wiki is?
So a wiki, and the best example of a wiki is Wikipedia, is a type of open source software, and anyone can download it and put it onto a web server. It's basically a place where you can put a document up, and then if you go onto Wikipedia, you can check the back of any document, and you'll actually see the debate that's going on that document. So it's actually very interesting if you go to a couple interesting Wikipedia pages, let's say, a politician's Wikipedia page. Sometimes people want to put in the nasty stuff that a politician has done, and then people debate it, and they upvote and downvote different parts of that document, and then you get an edited version that equals the truth on the front page. So that's all that the wiki is it is a way to basically democratically agree on what a document should be. Think of it almost as a huge track changes document. So the back end is where all the track changes are, and then the front end is where the finished document exists. And it continuously evolves as well, because as you edit it, it will continuously evolve into a newer, different, shorter, or longer document.
which is actually really, really helpful, especially if you have people on all over the place that are putting in content. You can see what's happening, and you're really getting the best of the best. And I use Google Docs with a lot of my team members, and they can you can see in real time. So instead of someone say working on a Word document and then sending the Word document, and then someone reviewing that and then sending it back, and then you have final version A, really fast, really final version A1 6, it just goes on and on. So it's a great system. So now here's something that I'm very fascinated about. If someone works remotely, it can actually get lonely. So let's talk about the human side of things for a second. So you have a remote team. If someone goes into the office, you've got your friends at the office, you got water cooler talk. There's a lot of people when they become adults and work, their friends usually are who they work with, because that's who they spend the majority of their week with. What kind of things do you do to build a team, to build a kind of buy-in outside of just, here are the things I have to do, here's step one, step two, but after a while that can get, boring, or that can get lonely. Is there anything that you can recommend folks look into for building a good relationship between team members that will be working remotely together?
Yeah, I think the biggest one would be if you have an application like Skype, or some of the paid versions are Slack or HipChat. We have an online water cooler. Right now, let me just see here. We've got 62 people on the online water cooler, and I haven't updated it today, but there's 362 messages on our online water cooler. And those are all it's chats about anything. Basically, what we've said is on that online water cooler, you can talk about business, you can talk about non-business. I'm just scanning through mine right now. It looks like one of our employees, Ray, has had a birthday, and everyone is wishing Ray a happy birthday and sending him some interesting photos. Another thing that we do is we have things like company Christmas parties. So we just had all of our Christmas parties, and we have a team in Eastern Europe that meets 2 or 3 times a year. And then we have a team in the Philippines that meets, and we rent out a pool, or we rent out a restaurant. We pay for everything, and we just let everyone hang out for the day. That's really fun for people to sort of touch base, connect a face to a name, or to just a Skype call or a Google Hangout call. It really helps to connect that person face to face. I know for us as well, we've really focused on trying to set up activities outside of work. So one of the things that we do is we have a monthly game night, and people can play online video games for an afternoon. And it's all paid by us. It's all basically on staff.com's bill, where they can go and play. We play Dota, which is a game that the developers love to play. I don't know if anybody knows Dota out there, but it is a fantastic, well, it's a little addictive, particularly for nerds like me. But we play it. We have our own league. And the variable that I was looking for when we started this type of policy, and we've only started this for about, I think it's been going on for about 6 to 12 months, is are we seeing people interact outside of the seeds that we've planted that are paid? So as an example, every month we have a video game afternoon, and it's paid. I think they get 3 to 4 hours of paid video game time. Do we see people actually playing video games outside of that time? And in fact, we do. And this is actually one of the things that I've personally seen as a very successful metric, which is these guys play Dota now every single week. They don't have to play Dota every single week. They only actually get paid to play Dota once a month. But they've decided to set up a little team, and I'll jump in from time to time, and we just do pickup games from time to time, and we chat over that, and just sort of chat about business, chat about friends, family, and it's a really interesting set of what these types of game nights and our Christmas parties and all that kind of stuff set up for us is interaction between silos. So what I mean by that is our customer service team rarely talks to our developers. That's a problem because customer service people take the tickets in for software glitches, and then they report those glitches to the developers. Well, if I have a game night where the customer service people are talking with the developers all the time, they start to develop a relationship that's more than just, hey, I'm going to send a ticket off to this mindless developer every single day. They're actually going to say, I'm going to send this ticket off to Rosen, or I'm going to send this ticket off to Rob. And oh, by the way, here's the context on that. And here's how I think that this client needs to solve this particular issue. Now, I can't necessarily track it as of yet, but from a qualitative perspective, it's definitely improved inter-silo communication. And I think that that is always a good thing when looking at how to really build a stronger remote company culture. We haven't really cracked it yet. And to be honest with you, no one's really cracked it, but we're on our way. And I think this is a big step in the right direction.
I think it's so great that you bring up the idea of silos, because I just read this really interesting study about these people who were trained and like chosen to be leadership in this particular corporation, and they would go through these amazing leadership developments, and then they would eventually leave the company. And they just get, why are all these people leaving our company? Like we train them, we give them everything, but what happened was they basically unknowingly created a silo where these people in the leadership development no longer was having access to meetings or parties or things like they used to, because they were kind of siphoned off to the side and, given this particular track. So it became a lonely position. So the company culture wasn't there. So when there's a silo of, hey, I am the salesperson and I never speak to this person, you think, that you don't understand that person, they're just mindless or faceless. But that interaction of, hey, let's go do something. And I love how you say within business hours, because I think it would be very difficult, and correct me if I'm wrong, to get people to do that as a company rule outside of hours. Like, hey, go play video games at 8:00 at night. And it's like, well, I got things to do. I can't be doing 8:00 at night.
Absolutely. I think this is one of the things that we've been really, I almost saw this as an investment back in the company culture, because it isn't, it's not cheap to basically shut down for half a day every month. It's actually very, very expensive to shut down for half a day every month. But at the end of the day, am I getting the sales guy to interact with the customer service guy, to interact with the developer guy, to say, hey, you know what? The sales guy who's calling people every day and is trying to close sales, maybe a trend comes up for that salesperson saying, you know what, I really wish that we had this feature. And then the developer says, wow, I didn't even know that we needed that feature. I think we should build it, and I could build it really quickly. And the customer service agent says, yeah, we totally could build this feature, and here's how we can solve it. When those customer service tickets come in, we can talk to the sales guy and talk to the developer to say, here are the bugs related to that feature, and here's what basically the customers are saying when those problems pop up. So it's really important. It's an experiment. As I said, we've only been doing it for 6 to 12 months. We're going to keep doing it because it's not hurting our bottom line. And to be honest with you, it's fun. So that's why we're going to keep doing it as well.
From a leadership perspective, do you have like one person whose job is to make sure all of these people are doing what they're supposed to do, whether it's for a fun time like the Dota half a day, or if it's just getting business done? Is it best to have one person whose job is to track all of the people's work, or is there a way to do that without having a dedicated person? What's your philosophy on that?
We have team leaders that work with everybody or work with their particular teams, and that's classically the way that we've been doing it. But we also have, so our company is a little bit unique in the sense that in terms of productivity, everyone within the company has access to everyone else's time doctor. So if you want access to my Time Doctor data, so if you want to know exactly what I was doing during the week, how often was I going on Facebook, how often was I going on Twitter, how long have I spent on Gmail, how long have I spent on Skype, what tasks was I doing during the day, you can have access to that information. And it creates for an environment where we are not simply monitoring how long you're working, but we're also watching each other's productivity. So we've made a commitment to say, if I'm working 40 hours per week, you better be working 40 hours per week. And the reverse happens as well. Just because we're the founders of the company does not mean that we should be working any less than anyone else within the company. Because if you're going to make the commitment to hire that person and they're working hard for you, you should at least have the same type of commitment back to them, because you have a responsibility as a leader to make sure, number one, that the company continues to grow and that the 60 plus people within the company all have jobs moving forward. We're trying to build a long-term business here. You know, we're dealing with people's lives, and at the end of the day, we want to be able to create an environment of complete openness within our organization. I actually don't know of anyone else that's gone that open, particularly within the Time Doctor ecosystem or the staff.com ecosystem, but it's our personal philosophy, and we've found that it's been incredibly helpful for people, particularly when I have a problem with somebody within the company and I say, hey, you know, your productivity isn't very good. How can I help you solve that problem? And they're much more understanding of that when they see what work I'm doing within the company in comparison to where they sit in the company. And it actually just creates an environment where it's just, as I said, completely open and very understanding on both sides, which is it's the first company that I've worked in that has been at that level of openness that I've interacted with. And so far, I really enjoy it.
So now, when you say Time Doctor, I know what it is. It's a great service of keeping track of time. But for those of folks who hear you say Time Doctor but not exactly sure what that means, tell everyone a little bit about how Time Doctor functions and what it is.
Sure. So right now, I am currently working on podcast for our likability podcast. So this is the current task that I'm working on, and I've been working on it for 42 minutes and 17 seconds. During that time, it's tracked all the applications that I've been on. So most of it is through Skype. Probably about 40 minutes of it is through Skype, and 2 to 3 minutes are on Gmail. So what Time Doctor does is it literally gives you productivity metrics for everything during your workday. If anyone knows Google Analytics, I'm sure probably a lot of your your listeners check out or know what Google Analytics is. This is literally like Google Analytics for your workday. So you can track exactly how productive you are and all of your team members are.
Very cool. So let's go into some specific examples as we start rounding out the tail end of our interview here. I love to hear of those super rock stars. You know, who's someone that has been a remote team member, a remote employee that was just like the ideal rock star. And I want you to think of it from the perspective of, I'm listening to this, I'm working in a remote company culture, or I'm going to be maybe getting into that field, and I want to make sure I stand out. Obviously, you know, if I'm in the office and people can see me, first one there, first one out, and they can see how hard I'm working and the sweat on my brow, and, you know, they can hear me interacting with people. There's all those like intangibles that can show. And obviously we have data that can show, you know, with Time Doctor, for example, when people log in, when people log out. But is there anyone from your experience that you think about and you're like, man, this person just absolutely crushed it, and if I could replicate this person, you know, 100 times over, I would be, you know, just an unbelievable force to be reckoned with? Who's someone who was like that, and what did they do that made them like that?
I think it boils down to, so I have a particular, my top rule for hiring is what I call the 10X rule, which is think to yourself, if I had 10 of them, if 10 of that employee were available, would I hire 10 of them? If the answer is yes, then I hire them. almost immediately. And sometimes I don't even know where I'm going to put them. uh, but I'll hire them preemptively, and then they'll almost organically find a spot. Now, my personal 10X is almost entirely based on execution. Very small component of it is intelligence or experience. So it goes in order of execution, experience, and intelligence. So if I have somebody that I know has done great work, great programming work, has a really good background of code that they've worked on in the past, but I also know that they can work 8 hours stable every single day, and they can put out, they're basically not clocking in and clocking out. They're not coming in at 9 and leaving at 5 and really not doing anything. And oh, by the way, the people that come in really early and leave really late in offices, a lot of the times they're not actually doing much. And there's a lot of data to show that the guys that are the real rock stars are the guys that maybe they start at 12 and they leave at 4, but you know what? They put in 4 hours of absolutely fantastic work. The average amount of work that someone gets done in an office environment, on average, is about 2.5 hours of real, actual sit down and get things done work. That to me blows me away, and there's a lot of studies to back that up. Remote workers actually are a lot more productive than their in-office counterparts. The biggest thing would be that they don't have the distractions that they have in a regular office. Things can get a little lonely, but fundamentally they are a lot more productive than their in-office counterparts. The second big piece that I would look at after their execution and their experience and their intelligence is, do I actually like to work with them? Are they somebody who I would have? Are they somebody that I would go out and have drinks with? If that's true outside of work, and if that's true, then that's probably somebody I'm going to get along with long term. And I've actually made those mistakes in the past to have. I've hired people that are just really smart people, but you know what? They don't work well with me, and I either put them on another team so I don't actually have to interact with them directly, or I have to fire them because they just don't match with my management style. And they also are quite, we actually had an experience just recently where, well, maybe not recently, about a year ago, where we fired our top sales rep. Literally, this guy was the best salesperson in the company. And when we reviewed the reports that other employees were giving us on that employee, we found that he was one of the most hated employees in the entire company. He would steal leads from other sales reps. He really wouldn't do his job properly. He would cherry pick his leads, which means if there's 100 leads in for the day, he would choose the 10 that he thought he could close, and he would give the rest of the junk ones to everyone else. He wouldn't pay attention to his manager. He would drop a whole bunch of work on people whose job it really wasn't to actually do that work, and all around just not a very nice guy. And I was resistant to getting rid of him because I'm thinking to myself, he sells twice as much as everyone else. Well, the reality is that after we got rid of this guy, we discovered all of this cherry picking that he was doing, and sales on average more than doubled his replacement. So what that means is the extra amount of sales that he was putting out, we had more than doubled that extra amount within 2 months from him getting out of the environment, just because everyone was happier and everyone was able to get their work done. And to be honest with you, a lot of those cherry-picked leads were now being distributed to everyone else within the company. So I think probably the best definition of that is team player. But I go a little bit more in depth than that. If I can't really get along with you, if you're not likable, then you're probably not going to be likable with anyone else, and we really don't want you working at the company.
Yeah, and it's so valuable when you are looking for ways to position yourself as being a team player, position yourself as giving your best. And I love what you said about execution being the number one thing, because if you do what you do really well and people like being around you, sky literally is the limit. You know, if people love being around you, but you can't do anything, they may love to have drinks with you, but they're not going to want to work with you. And if you can execute beyond measure, but no one likes you, or you're stealing leads, or you're doing it in a nefarious way, that's not going to help you either. It really is a combination of both. And I think that's what we're doing here with the art of likability. We're really showing you how to have a solid root of, you have to have a skill set, you have to be good, and you have to make sure that you are likable, i.e. being a great team player. When you have those skill sets, sky's really the limit. And I think that it works, whether it's remote, it works whether you're in person. So it's just, I'm beating this dead horse over and over every single podcast because it's so valuable, and it's not done, and you have the ability to do it and make yourself stand out. So make sure you do it. And Liam, let me know, as we come to the close here, what are some words of wisdom, or what are some other things you'd like to leave us with, that if somebody wants to really create a great company culture, a more likable company culture, if they want to position themselves to stand out among the pack, what's a great way to leave us based on the years of Liam Martin's amazing knowledge?
I would say the last year of my personal development has been turning myself into an executive from an entrepreneur. And those are two very different things. An entrepreneur goes out and does things, and an executive tells people to go out and do things. So I think I'm a much better executive than I was a year ago. I've actually gone through a lot of personal work to be able to get to that point. And I'm not the best, but I'm still working at it. I would suggest for anybody that is on that same particular path, even if you are an entrepreneur, let's say within an within a remote business, really one of the best books that I've read over the last 2 years on that subject is Good to Great. And there's a concept in there called the Level 5 Executive. And that really encapsulates what I think a likable worker is, someone who is a team player, executes on their job, doesn't have ego, focuses on building the business and not necessarily themselves. And I believe at the end of the day, even though you want to work, you want to build yourself up to the organization, the best way to grow, in my opinion, and this is what I monitor when I look at different employees and where I should put them within our organization, is, does everyone else like them in the company? Are they working for the company, or are they working for themselves? And how, if they're working for themselves, to be honest with you, they don't really move in that organization. If they're working for the company and everyone likes them, they move up. So Level 5 Executive, definitely Google it. Take a look at the book if you can. And, at the end of the day, just be nice. I think that's probably the biggest piece of advice that I could give. The same rules apply online as they do face-to-face. Don't be a nasty person, be a nice person, and you'll move up to the organization.
It just is so valuable. And I love, you've been dropping all these great gems, like the 10 times rule, the Level 5 Executive. These are all key fundamental concepts that I hope you don't, if you're listening right now, don't just skim over this. Do some extra work, do some Googling work, find out what it is. It's really valuable stuff. And I would ask all of you to ask yourselves, if I was in that position for someone to evaluate me, would they consider me a 10Xer? Am I someone that would be a company would love to have 10 people more like, not that you think you deserve to have 10 more people, but your company would say, based on how you do, there's 10 times, we want 10 more people like you. Are you doing things for the company or for yourself? Are you more interested in what you can get out of it, because the short-term benefit is high, but the long-term benefit is really low? And be nice. It's amazing what would happen. Just be nice. Notice what happens. And a lot of folks aren't nice because they're so wrapped up in their own mental stuff, their own mental garbage. Take some time to care about other people and just watch how awesome your life becomes. Even when it seems difficult, it's a good decision. And listen, if you want to know more about Liam Martin's businesses and what he's doing, check out timedoctor.com. Check out staff.com. They're both really fantastic resources. And if you're doing anything virtually, if you're a sales manager, if you're someone who's listening to this and you've not been doing time tracking, I definitely recommend checking out Time Doctor to keep track of your team as a great resource. And Liam, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Best way would be either through email at liam@staff.com, or, to be honest with you, one thing that I've loved recently is Clarity. A fellow Canadian entrepreneur, Dan Martel, has a platform, an expert platform where you can do live calls with people. And my link is clarity.fm/Liam. So jump on there if you want to do an in-depth call with me. I'm more than happy to be able to talk about anything remote.
On that, Clarity, so it's clarity.fm/Liam, is that right?
Yeah. Have you ever been to that site yet?
I've not even heard of it until just now, so I'm excited
about it. Oh man, it is so neat. I'll give Dan a plug too. we knew nothing about affiliate programs, and we decided to start up an affiliate program. And when we first looked over the different players out in the space, we found out that an affiliate program was probably going to cost us about $2,000 to $5,000 per month for the software that we wanted. We did 2 Clarity calls, and I believe these were $4 to $5 per minute, but these are the definitive experts on affiliate management in the tech world. And I think we spent about $100, and we ended up taking our costs down from $2,000 to $5,000 per month to $300 final to be able to set up everything, because they knew exactly what we needed to do. They said, no, this software is junk. You don't need this. You need this. Here's how you set it up. And it's an amazing resource if you want to talk to the best experts on any subject related to business.
That's something I've actually never heard of, and I'm definitely interested in checking that out. Pearls of wisdom, Liam. These pearls are so shiny and pretty. So thank you, Liam, and thank you all for listening. Listen, remote culture, it's going to, if it's not part of your life right now, it will be. This is where we're moving, folks. So make sure if you are part of this, you use what you learned here to get the edge. If you're not part of it, you will be one day. Mark my words. So it's better to get a jump on it right now. Make sure you check me out on Twitter at Arel Moody. Tweet me your questions. I get all these messages from y'all, and I love getting them. So keep reaching out to me. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm the only Arel Moody. Start using the hashtag. I want to start using the hashtag Art of Likeability. So I want to start tracking conversations with folks. So tweet me a question or just post something. Use hashtag Art of Likeability, all one word. And I want to start doing a new thing at the end of each show where I pose a question to you, the listener, so I can hear back from you. Let me know, how has remote working worked for you or not worked for you in a positive way? Have you been a remote worker and it's not been good? What's been your horror stories? Has it been really good? What are some of your success stories with it? I want to hear from you. So go ahead and tweet me, use the hashtag Art of Likeability, and just let me know at any point. I don't care if you're listening to this and you're like, yo, this episode is, months old. Tweet me. I remember all the episodes, and just use the hashtag. And I'd love to hear from you. So let me know, what are some of your best stories working with someone remotely, and what are some of the horror stories of doing it? And make sure to check out Liam on the Clarity website, clarity.fm/Liam. Check out staff.com, timedoctor.com. And listen, folks, this stuff is going to help you build better relationships. And if you build better relationships, you're going to have more success and more happiness and more money. And if you don't want more success and more happiness, why did you just spend an hour of your time with us? You could have been doing something completely different. But of course, that's what you want. And that's why you keep listening. And if you keep coming back, we'll keep producing it. Sending you all a big old high five. Liam, sending you a high five. You listening, sending you a high five. You are awesome.
Thanks for listening to The Art of Likeability. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast for more awesome info on how you can improve your likability and improve your life. Until next time, remember,